Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Susan Johnson, ESP and doctoral student. Today isn't a recruitment pitch. It's a discussion about how we might transform ESP teacher collaboration. I want to share what I'm learning, get your insights on what could work here, and explore together what changes might be possible at different levels of our school. My unique position, working as an ESP while researching collaboration, has revealed some interesting patterns. Through preliminary surveys and observations, I'm starting to understand what makes some partnerships thrive while others struggle. This action research approach means we test ideas as we go, not waiting until the end to implement changes. Today, I want to discuss what's emerging and hear your thoughts on what might work in our context. Here's what we rarely talk about. Students don't experience us separately. They experience the relationship between us. From our preliminary survey, your colleagues are already naming this. I think the teacher thinks less of me and treats me like a student rather than a colleague. Or, some teachers want to work with me, others just see me as an extra pair of hands. Or, there's often insufficient time for planning and communication. When our collaborative relationship is undefined or strained, students struggle. But when it works, that's when extraordinary things happen. What patterns do you see in your own work? Where does this communication work well, and where does it break down? Let me share two powerful examples from our own school. Poetry champions. Two of our students with Down syndrome each won awards in separate community writing contests this year. These weren't special need contests. Their poems were judged blind on merit alone, competing against all students. How did this happen? Their ESP, general education teacher, and special education teacher created a seamless support system. The general ed teacher pre-taught vocabulary, the English teacher taught poetic structure, and the ESP teacher adapted the writing process. But more importantly, they communicated constantly, shared the same vision, and believed in possibilities. The weekly storyteller. One of our students with autism now writes and performs a new original story every single week. A year ago, this student struggled to complete any writing task. What changed? An ESP, general education teacher, and special ed teacher formed what I call a true collaborative relationship. They shared strategies throughout the week and consistently reinforced each other's approaches. The student experienced them as one unified support team. These aren't miracles. This is what happens when the ESP-teacher relationship is strong, defined, and valued. And these aren't just feel-good stories. They're case studies in what works. Our poetry champions succeeded because of specific practices. The team met regularly and aligned their approaches. The ESP previewed vocabulary during pullout time that the teacher used in whole class instruction, and they shared docs and information to track strategies that worked. The student's transformation happens through regular hurdles between ESP and teacher, a communication notebook that traveled with the student, and aligned behavior reinforcement strategies. Here's my question for you. What would it take to make these practices standard rather than exceptional? What barriers would we need to address? But we also know the flip side. When the ESP-teacher collaboration is undefined or unsupported, students receive mixed messages and become anxious. Critical information falls through the cracks. Expertise goes untapped. Students spend energy navigating between adults instead of learning. As one colleague wrote in the survey, we need to be able to work as a team to help the student, not in spite of each other. The difference between poetry awards and shutdown behaviors? Often it's the quality of our collaborative relationship. And that's why I'm pursuing this research. We need to make the invisible visible, define what ESP-teacher collaboration actually means in practice, move beyond extra hands, establish ESPs as educational partners with valuable expertise, create clear structures, develop guidelines that support rather than assume these relationships will just work out. Replicate success. Understand what made those poetry wins and weekly stories possible and make it the norm, not the exception. Through interviews, I've identified specific costs of poor collaboration. Micro-level impact. One ESP spends 30 minutes daily translating between different teacher styles. That's 2.5 hours per week of lost instruction time. Macro-level impact. We have no systematic way to share what works. When an ESP discovers a breakthrough strategy, it stays in that one classroom. Community-level impact. Parents report confusion or frustration when they get a diffuse or abstract perspective about their child's progress due to unaligned behavior reinforcement strategies. What costs do you see in your departments? Where do we lose time, energy, or opportunities? Let me be specific about what changes could look like. Micro-level or individual and immediate level. Example, ESP teacher pairs establish Monday morning sync 5-minute standing meetings. An example, create a shared digital notebook for each student. What could you implement tomorrow without anyone's permission? Macro level or school systems this semester, more immediate. Example, dedicate 15 minutes of monthly faculty meetings to ESP teacher team sharing. Example, create ESP teacher liaison roles in each department. What system changes would require administrative support but could happen quickly? Community level or district culture next year in the future. Example, develop ESP career pathways that recognize expertise. Example, include ESP teacher collaboration in formal evaluation rubrics. What long-term changes would shift how we value these partnerships? Which level seems most achievable to start with in your area? Rather than imposing outside solutions, we're developing guidelines from what actually works here. The process looks like this. Weeks 1 to 3, gather your experiences through surveys and interviews. Weeks 4 to 5, identify patterns and test initial strategies in volunteer classrooms. Week 6 to 7, refine based on what we learn. Week 8, craft draft guidelines with your input. And week 9, revise based on feedback. You'll see drafts and have input throughout. Nothing gets finalized without your voice. Here's how we'll test ideas before committing. Pilot testing. If 3 ESP teacher pairs want to try daily check-ins, we'll document what happens, good and bad. Rapid cycles. We won't wait months to adjust. If something isn't working after 2 weeks, we'll modify it. Multiple models. What works in math might not work in English. We'll develop flexible approaches. For example, one team is testing a Friday 5, spending 5 minutes each Friday documenting one strategy that worked that week. Next month, we'll know if this is worth scaling up. What small experiments would you be willing to try? Your role in shaping this. This research needs diverse perspectives. If you participate, you'll help identify what's working now, test new approaches in real time, and shape guidelines you'll actually use. If you observe, you'll still benefit from what we learn and can provide informal feedback. Either way, you're part of the conversation about improving our students' experience. The time commitment is minimal. One 30-minute interview or a 15-minute survey, plus optional participation in pilot tests. Everything is confidential and voluntary. Let's talk honestly about implementation. Quick wins, like immediately this semester or next semester for the fall. Better communication protocols, shared planning tools, recognition of ESP expertise. Medium-term changes, like next year, structural supports like meeting time, professional development, and clear role definitions. Long-term vision, like 2 or 3 years, ESPs as full educational partners, systematic collaboration expectations, and a district-wide culture shift. But here's the key. We start with what we can control. Today, that means understanding what works in our building and testing small improvements. Here's some potential discussion questions for today. What's one collaboration success you've experienced that we could learn from? What's the biggest barrier to ESP teacher collaboration in your area? What small change would make the biggest difference in your daily work? How can we ensure these guidelines actually get used and not just filed away? Let's create practical solutions that make excellence routine. Your insights today will shape what we test tomorrow. You can contact me at johnson.su@northeastern.edu or find me in the hall. I'm always willing to chat. Thanks.